this video, let's concentrate now on adding our first batch of game files. So this is relatively simple to do. First of all, do you remember earlier on in the previous video we specified where our salt file was? Well, we're going to need that salt. If you remember, I used DannyTest 2K23 bytebox. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that, because what you need to do before you do anything else inside the patch builder, you need to go to edit and edit patch salt, and then you need to type in that patch salt in there. Now, as you can see, it's telling me it should be less than 16 characters long. So I got it wrong in the previous video. I thought we had a limit of 32, but we don't. We have 16. So I can literally delete bytebox off there and leave it as DannyTest 2K23. And then I can just click on update. Now, because of this error, I need to go back and just modify the file on the server. I'm just going to get rid of bytebox because it needs to be the same. So it's now DannyTest 2K23. Upload that back to the server. And then, yeah, so it's the same now inside here. And the reason why we do that is it's just a cross-reference. It's just to make sure that you are compiling with the correct patch salt. That's all it is. So we have our first version 0.1.0. Let's go to scan and scan directory. So then what it's going to do is going to pop up with this folder. So I'm going to go to the folder that I created on my desktop, which is new patch test. So new patch test, and then files in. Do you remember? Go to new patch test and files in. These are our game files here. So we just click on files in, click OK, and it's going to ask us, it's going to say, please note these are very intensive scans. The app may look like it's crashed, but it really hasn't. Do not click anywhere or use any other application until scan is complete. Do you wish to perform a scan now? So basically what this is saying is that the AOPS patch builder, when it scans through your files, it does it at a very fast rate. I mean, the numbers are phenomenal. You're probably looking at around, I don't know, maybe up to 1,000 files a second. So the best thing to do is when you come to this part of the patch building process and you want to scan over your game files, just click on yes and then leave it alone. Don't click anywhere, don't use any other application, because it could potentially crash the software. It doesn't take long at all to do the scan. You'll see how quick it does it in this video actually. And how many files do we have in here altogether? So we have just shy of 1,000 files. Watch how fast it scans through all them files. And there you go, it's done. I think that was less than a second. So it's literally scanned up just under 1,000 files in less than a second, and it's got all the file structure there. It's got all the files that exist in here, which are our potential game files. It's got all the subfolders and all the files underneath the subfolders as well. So what occurs here now is you've got this patch list and you're in full control of this patch list. So, for example, you can see all the information on each file. So you can see that the time it was created or modified or last modified, including the hours. That's the date and the timestamp. You can also see how big it is at the byte level. So for example, this HTML file here is 560 bytes, whereas this JSF file here is 33,000 bytes. And then we have some additional switches, which I'll cover in a second, and then the final checksum. This checksum includes not only the date modification, timestamp and the file size, but also our secret salts, which we entered earlier as well. And that's what makes this checksum unique to our game files. So you can navigate through this list, and basically you can, if you right click on any file, you can choose different things. Like for example, you can choose to compress certain files, you can choose to ignore certain files, and you can choose to force overwrite particular files. So let's just cover these one by one real quick for you. So for example, let's take a look at this arrow JSF file. If you right click on that and select compression, we can select number 9, which is the highest compression. So basically what will happen is when we come to build this patch, it will compress this file at the highest level, which is 9. And you can choose any level. Now you don't have to do it one by one. You can hold down, you can select a file, hold down shift on the keyboard, and select more files if you need to, or you can hold down Control on the keyboard and select individual files like this, and then you can simply right click and choose to batch, compress, ignore, or force overwrite. So what is ignore and force overwrite? Well, ignore means it's going to include the file in the scan for the update, but it's not going to actually download it. It's not going to do nothing. It's not going to check anything. And there's a couple of reasons or a couple of scenarios that this is plausible to use. For example, if you do decide to include your launcher files inside your patch scans, then there's a set of files that you need to ignore. And the reason why you need to ignore those files is because they're actually in use by the launcher and the patch system itself. So you're not going to be able to download or patch or overwrite those files because it's being used by the patching process itself. Those files are documented on the documentation system, in case you're wondering what I'm referring to. So if you're not including your launcher files in your game scan, don't worry about what I've just said. But if you are including your launcher files inside your patch scans, just head over to the documentation and just type in the search excluded files, and you'll see what I mean. And then force overwrite. So there is a reason why you might want to particularly force overwrite a particular file. For example, there might be a file that the user the game modifies, and you need, it might have the same modification timestamp, the same date timestamp. It might be the same file size. So in that instance, the game, the patcher will probably look at it and go, well, there's no difference here. So it doesn't need patching, but maybe there is some data inside there which is different, because it doesn't read the data, it reads the timestamp and the file size alongside the secret salt to generate a checksum. So there are some instances where you want to force overwrite particular files, and what this means is no matter whether the checksum's different or not, the patcher will download and overwrite that file regardless, no matter what. So many people won't need to use this at all, but it is there available just in case you do need to use it. So that's pretty much that covered. And as you can see, we have 983 files, and we have an index of 982, and that's because we start at index 0. So in essence, there are 983 files there which have been scanned in. So what do we do now then? Once you've gone through all this and configured everything the way you want it to work, we can literally go to build and then patch files. When you click on this, it's going to bring up a new dialog, and it's going to ask again for the patch salt, so we can enter the patch salt URL online where our salt's contained. And then we already know that we're scanning game files in because we've already scanned it here, so it's going to ask where the output directory is. Now I've created a blank folder called files out here, so I can literally copy this address here and pop it in here, and I'm going to put the preceding trail as well. The patch list file, this is already automatically populated, so you don't need to do anything with that. And then custom extension, it's already got it from our settings earlier when we specified. Now you have a couple of additional options here. You have ignore compression flags and close dialog when compilation complete. So ignore compression flags, maybe you have, say, loads of different individual files that you've applied compression to, but you've seen there's a bit of a problem going on, or you just want to build a patch with no compression, but you don't want to go through all the files again and choose 0 for files that have that have compression. So you can just choose to ignore compression flags if that is the case. So that's pretty much it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click build patch. It's going to go through each one of these files inside the files in. It's going to copy them over and rename them into files out. So I'm going to click build patch now, and you'll see this in action. And again, doesn't take long at all. Obviously, it's not as quick as the files in, because on the files in, it was just getting the information from the files. When you're building the files out, it's actually copying the whole contents of the file. So it's copying the 138 meg at the same time. And now when we go to our files out folder, you can see that we have our files ready for upload, and they've all got the custom extension appended to the end. So that's not going to cause us, or it shouldn't cause us, any problems when it comes to the patch of downloading the files from the server. So what do we do now then? Okay, so let's go to our server, go into game files, and let's see all these files. We're going to, on the files out, we're going to select all of them. Now before you do that, a little tidbit here for you. If you're using FileZilla, if you're using some other FTP application, I don't really know where this setting's going to be, but you should be able to find it quite easy. But in FileZilla, what you need to do is you need to click on transfer and go to transfer type and make sure you have binary selected. And the reason for that is because if you upload in ASCII or auto, it's going to change the encoding method. Sorry, not method, just the encoding of the files that you upload, and that's going to cause a whole host of problems. So you want to make sure that you're uploading files in binary mode, and this means it basically uploads the file as a complete mirror image to how the file is stored on your computer. So just make sure that binary is selected before you upload any files to your server. And then once you've done that, we just simply grab these and we're going to drag and upload them to the game files folder like we specified earlier on in our settings. So a quick recap while that's just doing that. We don't need to build patch now, we've already built that patch out. In fact, what we can do while they're uploading is we can do the finishing touches. There's not much left to do now because we're uploading the game files. We basically just need to build out the patch configuration file. So we can export configuration. Now, I've got a folder called info here, and this is where I'm going to export the patch configuration. There we go, just type in patch config, save that. You can see there that it's exported that out. And then what we can do is we can export our patch list as well for version 0.1.0. Export the patch list, same procedure, except we're going to call it patch list. Save that, and there you go. So we now have our patch configuration and our patch list ready to rock and roll. Let's just check the upload status of them files. We're nearly there. I think that's pretty much it. There's not really much more else to cover on that. You see, it's not as tricky as you'd imagine it would be. It's relatively easy to use. So they're the steps that you need to follow. Now I'll just go over this quickly because when you want to come to build your next patch, it's even quicker because you've already got all your configuration and that done. So when you want to build your next patch, you simply just click on add new version and you type in the new version number. So for instance, this will be 0.2.0, and then you just repeat the same again. You just go to scan the files for 0.2, and then once you've scanned your files and they appear in here, just go through the files, do whatever you need to do, and then just click on build patch files and build patch list. You don't need to build your configuration file out again unless you've changed something in the settings. So that's pretty much it. So you do create a new version. This is for future versions. Create a new version, scan the files, build the patch files out and upload them, and then build out the patch list as well. I'm just going to go back to 0.10 there. This should be nearing completion. So you can see it's uploaded these files to the dannytest.biteboxserver.com server. And we've already built out our configuration file and our patch list. And again, you don't need to build your configuration file out unless you change something inside here. What's this saying? Yeah, go. yeah, you don't need, obviously the first time you build your first patch, you need to build the configuration out. The configuration is used by the patching system, so you'll need to put that inside your data folder or upload it. If you're using the developer edition, you can upload the configuration file to your server. So that means that you can change any of your patch configuration at any time and just upload it to your server, and every time a user runs the patch system, it'll get the fresh settings every time, which is a pretty cool feature. But for Indie, you can't do that because you can't use command lines. Right, so that's done. We don't need to do anything else with the AOPS patch builder anymore. So we've got our files now on the server, and again, you'll notice for the protection of your files, if we try and go to the game files directory through the web browser, it won't let us. It's like, nope, you don't have the rights to look through these game files. But don't worry, because the patching system will be able to access the patch files. Now, just before we finish, do you remember the patch list and patch configuration that we built out here? Do you remember the patch list? Do you remember where we specified the patch list to go? Just reopen up the patch builder. Because remember we did the hypotheticals earlier on in the configuration. Well, we've already generated them files now, so we can upload them to where they need to be. So I'm going to open up our project again inside the patch builder, and I'm just going to go to settings and just remember, look, so we just said we'd put it in the root folder, patch list. So I'll go to the root folder here, upload the patch list, and there's our patch list on our server. We've already got our salts and we've already got our game files. They're the three most important things now after the first build. So we've got our game files folder here with all our games in, ready to go. We've got our patch list uploaded here, which is ready to go, and our patch salt uploaded here, so that's ready to go as well. And that's pretty much it. So what's going to happen now, up to now, is if you try and run the patching system, it should work. There's no reason why it shouldn't work. But in the next video, we're going to cover everything. We're going to cover that as well, and we're going to cover running the patch system from your launcher.